Hey, Unchainers! This is Ti'Amert, and you're listening to the Unchaining Me podcast. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Unchaining Me podcast. This is not just another episode. This is the first one of the new year 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. I have a very special guest for you guys for this episode. Her name is Hanna Casahun, and I met her in 2019. Our common friend, Helena, and most of you might know her from Inside Out Transformations, a fellow life coach, a friend. She invited me over to be part of a panel discussion she was putting together to empower the community. And there was this 23, 22 maybe years old young woman who just took my breath away with just how mature, how seasoned, how wise she was, well beyond her years. And of course, we kept in touch. We continued following one another's work on social media. And then eventually I got to have her on my podcast. So this is part one of the two-part series we are doing with Hanna Casahun. It is on seeking. So it's about having the heart and life and mindset of a seeker. A little bio about Hanna Casahun. Hanna Casahun is a published author. She wrote an amazing poetry book, Love Letters to Luna, which I own a copy of and I absolutely love. She's a multidisciplinary artist, a clinical mental health therapist in training. Her work centers on healing, connection, and liberation. So by now you already know how in sync I would be with Hanna. With a professional background, including her BA in psychology and current master's degree pursuit in clinical mental health counseling, Hanna weaves her educational background with her passions into projects that inspire personal and collective transformation. Her advocacy for mental health extends to the Ethiopian diaspora, where she creates spaces for open dialogue, vulnerability, and growth, addressing cultural and emotional taboos and complexities. She combines her love for storytelling and psychoeducation in her poetry book, Love Letters to Luna, to promote healthy emotional honesty, release, and healing. Hanna's creative pursuits reflect her passion for amplifying voices and stories that challenge societal norms while fostering liberation and authenticity. She should have been on this podcast way longer than now, right? Yes, I agree. At the heart of Hanna's work is a commitment to inspiring others to embrace their journeys with joy, courage, and tenacity. Whether through art, advocacy, or education, she aims to build a world where collective healing and liberation are both possible and celebrated. This is part one of my time with Hanna Casahun. Enjoy. Grab yourselves a cup of coffee, tea, or your favorite beverage because you are about to go on a journey with us. Welcome. Hanna, thank you so much for being here with me. I am so excited to have this conversation. I know even if we weren't recording, we would have a blast and such an amazing time talking about what we're about to talk to. But even better, we're recording it. We have some questions. I know it's going to go out there and heal people, help people, guide people. So I'm so grateful that you've accepted my invite and you're at the Unchaining Me podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited for this conversation as well. Long overdue.
Long overdue, I know, but better late than never. So we're talking about seeking. I mean, I grappled with the title a little bit. I want to ask you, what does the concept itself of seeking mean to you personally?
Seeking is a way of life to me. It's about digging deep and being super intentional about the way that you live. To seek is, that's a way of life for sure. It's not just a verb. I think it's a heart posture It's an intention and the way that you move through life.
Wow.
Yeah.
A heart posture. That's just amazing because I'm visualizing what the heart
Mhm.
of a seeker, a lifelong seeker, would look like. And I'm looking at open, but also broken open. So some wounds there because we both know seeking ain't easy. It ain't for the faint-hearted. So tell me more about
Mhm.
when you first realized that you were one, that your heart's posture was that of a seeker and you were in search of something more. Was there like a trigger, a turning point, or you've just always known? Tell me more about that.
Yeah. I think pain was a big motivator. I think that was my turning point, grappling with pain in life from an early age. I think I was very familiar with pain, let me say that, through upbringing. I think the way that I grew up forced me to ask some deeper questions, forced me to process and navigate some deeper things. And I think the pain of certain things, like you said earlier, broke me open. And seeking was a sort of coping and navigating through some of life's situations. And then that quickly became my rhythm, you know. That's the way I moved through.
Hmm. I'm curious. I mean, I relate to a lot of the things you just said about the emotional pain and finding seeking as a way to cope with that. But I also know, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, seeking brought its own pain because sometimes it was just easy to just accept that things were just the way they were. But these questions that kept arising, like why? Why not?
Mm.
Why me? Or then, at the same time, why not me? And this doesn't make sense. I need more answers. That brought even more pain at times. Would have been easy to
Mm.
just go with the flow. And I see a lot of people that just revert to that, to just acceptance of the
Mm.
way things are and not dig deep or ask or have the posture that you said about the a heart's posture of a seeker. Was that true for you? And did you experience it as a painful endeavor, or did it really help you cope?
That's a great point because 100% ignorance is bliss. Um, it's easier to move through life without having the burden or the responsibility of such deep awareness, because I think seeking leads to awareness. You're seeking to find something, and you will find it. But like you said, it's a painful endeavor, absolutely is. But it's a double-edged sword, I think. On the other end of the pain of awareness and the burden of knowing a lot of things about life, about people, about existence, when you start answering those questions, it is painful. Because I think you lose your childlike innocence of seeing, the world through rose-colored glasses. When you see people as, one-dimensional, or because everything is much more simple. So when that, I guess, shatters and you start seeing things as they are, or you seek out truth in all aspects, there is a pain there, there's a grief there, as you start seeing things as the way that they are. But on the other end of that, I think the more the more seeking leads you to truth, you get to experience things with the fullness of how they are, without the illusions, without the rose-colored glasses, or you projecting your own wants and desires onto things, but you see things as they are, and you get to experience them as they are. And there's a lot of presence that comes with that, a lot of fulfillment too. So I take both, the pain, yes, it's necessary. It's part of it, but there's also so much beauty and in the truth that you get to experience at the same time.
That is profound. It's really the paradox that I keep finding in every area of life, that there's this thing and there's that thing. They seem to be opposites, but they coexist so beautifully if I stop resisting one or the other. So what you're saying, how I hear it is, yes, there's going to be pain in the unknown, in the seeking, and at the same time, you're going to find the joy of the fullness of life and the fullness of those things that you're seeking. So you're carrying those things simultaneously, which I think is such a beautiful, harmonized way to exist in this life. And I'm sure both of us agree on this. Like, there is seeking for your growth, for your personal growth, and then there's seeking for external validation or seeking for success. How do you differentiate between the two in your life?
When I first read that question, it was so hard to recognize what it looked like to seek for external validation, and I think that's a good thing.
That's amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
Showed me, I guess, how much authenticity and, like, I guess, a genuine approach to seeking that I've gotten to. But I think the difference is in the intention, and the who and the why. So I think when it comes to seeking for external validation and for quote unquote success, to me, I read that as it's for someone else. It's for, it's someone else's definitions. It's someone else's path that I'm seeking and following. Then versus, seeking for personal reasons, for personal growth. I think that stems from within, yeah, and the why becomes very personal. And that distinction in and of itself, when you're answering your own questions, when you're asking your own questions, when you're paving your own path for the sake of self, for the sake of, fulfilling your own soul's calling, it looks very different from, the opposite, which I think you can seek and it never be this like, I'm asking my own questions and I'm digging deep within. It could be an external seeking of, I'm seeking this path of success that's been handed to me, and yeah, and let me check off all these boxes, and figure out how to do this so I can say that I've made it in the definition of, how our society defines it. So it's a very different path.
So what I hear you saying is, yes, it is okay to seek for success. And, the external validation, to some extent, we do want that belonging. We do want to be, in some ways, admired, loved, right? It's part of our innate need to belong and to feel like we're approved in some ways. But asking those questions of, what does success look like for me? Is it really my definition or someone else's? Who am I out here in life trying to please? Where are those questions coming from? Are they my questions, or have I just blindly adopted them? I'm hearing that in what you're saying. So there is an inherently something wrong with seeking for success, but it's the who or the why and the intention that matters. I see seeking as change. Like, it will happen. Everyone's seeking. We're all seeking, just like everything's changing. The difference is, like you said, is it intentional? Are we aware of it, or are we just, on the tail end of the consequences or the results of those things? I found out that there was something called seeking, or that I was seeking, by realizing that I was seeking for external validation and approval and love. It wasn't really even success for me. It was this deep need to constantly be approved by others, and in many ways people that it didn't even matter to me, from such a young age. So I realized that after a few trial and errors that were in some ways costly, I started realizing that, okay, this seeking is taking me to this place of more emotional pain, even more need for approval and validation, the lack of self, a healthy concept of self. So I guess I am seeking this thing out of other people. And if this is leading me to more pain and dissatisfaction, then is there a different way to seek? So that's kind of like how my seeking journey unfolded. Coming back to you and your life, what would you say right now is in the essence of what you're truly seeking in life right now?
I think the true essence of what I'm seeking right now is a combination of truth and joy, I would say. A lot of the things that I do, a lot of what guides my decisions or my motivations is seeking truth and joy. And truth, even I think when I first sought out on that journey, I thought truth looked a certain way. Um, and that was more of a blanket statement.
That was going to be my next question. What is truth?
I jumped ahead.
Thank you for getting there. Yeah.
So I think being okay with not knowing what it would look like and setting my intention of, okay, whatever truth will look like, I'm willing to, do what it takes to seek it out and arrive wherever it leads. So definitely a journey of embracing the unknown. But yeah, I would say it's definitely truth.
Beautiful, just beautiful, because I just absolutely, that resonates with me so much. Being okay with not knowing is just, it needs to be framed and tweeted and all of that, because I think a lot of us struggle. We want to know, we want to find out, we want to control, we want certainty. It's almost like we're in the wrong life, like someone just put us in the wrong life, like it's some kind of video game and we're just the wrong character in this particular video game, because everything really, when you look, it's uncertain, to love, be loved, to last, not last, what happens after we die. A lot of things are things that we cannot pinpoint and prove and control. And yet most of us are after exactly doing that, which is impossible to do. And when you said truth and joy, I was also going to ask, are those things compatible? Like, can they go together? As you're seeking for truth, can you also find joy? Or are you trying to get to a certain outcome, a certain answer? And is joy also the arrival, or is that the process? I know you mentioned some answers in what you already said, but I would like for you to give me and our audience your understanding of the destination versus the journey when it comes to seeking something in your life.
I think originally I was looking for something specific. So, for context, I think truth at the beginning of my journey, I believed would set a lot of things right. If I knew what was true, I would know what was right. And then I could, quote unquote, live the right way. So I think it was very much an existential question,
Mm.
reaching a point post grad, just graduating from my bachelor's, entering the real world. There's so many unknowns. There's so many, things that you need to fill. And so around that time, I was questioning a lot of things, and questioning how should I live? Who should I be? All these existential questions about life, about existing, about being a human. And then I'm like, okay, well, if I can find truth, then I can figure out what I guess
I
the
can do it
the
right, right?
exactly. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
So that was the original, goal. And maybe a year or two into that journey, very quickly learned that there's no arriving at truth. There's no arriving on these like very existential, philosophical questions. That life is not that black and white, unfortunately.
Mm.
So, reality hits, and I think in the disappointment of how many things were constantly changing, including myself, I had to accept that, oh, yeah, there's no arriving. There's no one answer that I'm seeking. There's not one thing that I'm seeking. And my definition of truth then began to also evolve along with me. And I realized it was the process of, being intentional and being honest with myself and not being afraid to break out of the box or to deconstruct, certain beliefs or certain values and get to the bottom of things. And then really, once I do that nitty gritty, I get to define things for myself. And in the process, when I get down and dirty and dig and plant, then whatever fruit grows from that is something that I fully believe and see myself in, and that's the importance. Which doesn't mean like that could never, go through the journey of re-seeking or re-asking certain questions or challenging old beliefs. But it's just learning to do so, learning to be open enough, to be curious enough about myself, about life, about people, about, the everyday things so that I'm fully present in my life. And when I look at myself, when I look at the life that I'm building, I see myself in all of it. Where I won't look at it and be like, oh, I don't know why I do that thing, or I don't know why I believe this. Um, I didn't want to build a life that I didn't see myself in. So it is 100% about the journey, about the process of seeking.
Wow, and just curiosity. I hear you mentioning the term a few times. I think that's a superpower. I think it's a birthright. I think we all had it. It was kind of acceptable to a certain extent when we were toddlers. Even then, it made adults uncomfortable, right? Touching things and discovering things and going out of the norm just to see how that would feel, and then finding your own equilibrium through it, finding your own joy, finding things your own way. It did make people uncomfortable. I see it making me uncomfortable raising toddlers right now. But somehow in adulthood, I don't know if it gets beat out of us or we let it go too because we just want certainty and predictability, and which are not available in this life here. But yeah, curiosity is amazing. And thank you for not calling existential crisis. Thank you for calling it existential questions, because I think it gets a bad rep that we go through those phases in our lives, those moments that we have those questions. And it need not be a crisis, right? I'm trying to find joy in the doubts and the processes and in the, like you said, going back to the same questions that I felt I had answered for myself because I'm different now than I was 2 years ago, and being okay with that change and teaching that to my kids. Nothing about that is a crisis. So thank you for that. And
Absolutely.
another thing that bubbled up for me was how you, after coming out of postgrad, you had this vision to like do it right. You know, how do I find the right things to do and do exactly that? And then through your own discovery, you arrived at, there's no such thing. But for me, I came from the other extreme. Like, how do I stop doing things wrong? Like, what's wrong with me? Is
Yeah.
this a curse? Is this like, what is going on? And that's how like I kind of came like backward from that. But it's just,
Yeah.
I guess it's beautiful to notice how we take different paths on this journey of seeking, but we arrive at that same place where curiosity takes us. Anything coming up for you with that?
Absolutely. You know, I think, well, one, it's important to like acknowledge that everyone's, launching pad towards seeking absolutely looks different.
Right.
For me, it was definitely my perfectionism that made me want to seek out the right way, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
A lot of that stemmed from fear, which along the way, I definitely shed. The more I was able to accept that there's no right answers, and even to accept that, like, doing things wrong wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, for you, your journey of, doing things wrong led you to seeking out better ways to do things
Mm,
or,
mm,
to grow and being okay with that, not having the shame of like there is one right way, and if I'm
right.
not living a certain way, then I'm bad or I'm failing or yeah. So there's a lot of acceptance that came along the way.
Yeah. And I'm noticing that shame is absolutely a learned emotion to internalize, a learned phenomenon, because my 4 year old now wakes me up from my slumber sometimes when she makes a mistake. She tells me, "Ooh, mistakes help me learn." And I'm like, who's the parent
I
here?
love that.
You're right. I don't like the mess that your mistake created. But yeah, you're right. It does help you learn. Let's go into the challenges of having a seeker's mentality or the courage to seek. What are the some of the biggest challenges you faced while seeking clarity or answers in your life?
That's the easy one, and one I'm still grappling with.
I have a list ready, so let's check it
Oh,
as we go down the list.
yeah. Uh, I think it's the grief that comes along with it. The grief of it's not that easy to integrate into society, into my relationships. So there's like constant change that I'm always having to process, and that includes a lot of loss, whether it's of like loss of familiarity of like who I used to be or how I used to do things as I'm like seeking and changing and finding, healthier, more aligned ways of doing things. Uh, there's a lot of grief there when you realize that like, oh, I used to be the source of a lot of my suffering because I used to, you know, do this, or a lot of my behavior stem from, self-sabotage. And now I'm learning that. I'm aware of that. And now I'm learning better ways of doing things. But that involves the grief of like, but I used to do it this way for a long time. And it caused a lot of pain to myself or others, or yeah. So you're constantly grieving and shedding and letting go. And there's this like rhythm. And I always compare it to the seasons of okay, that like, in every season, there's not always going to be, flowers blooming or fruit growing from the trees. There will be shedding. and seasons of lifeless branches where there's grief and sadness and pain. But that is part of the process and being able to embrace that. Um, and not a lot of people choose to go as deep as I go, um, and choose not to grow in ways that I choose to grow or seek as deep as I choose to seek. And I used to be upset when I loved weren't as curious, about life or about their past or about themselves or their childhoods, and like they were very much content with living the way they've always lived. And for me, I'm like, no, guys, we should all be seeking. We should all be doing this, hard work and digging deeper and asking ourselves these hard questions and going back and analyzing our childhood traumas and digging into like why we
Misery
do the
loves
things that
company, right? Come over on this side and let's grieve together. Why y'all happy with simple answers? Damn it.
there's so many things to know.
Right.
And that I'm sure that made me very insufferable. When it came from an innocent place,
Right.
but I had to grow to accept that that's not everybody's calling. That's not everybody. But that's not for everyone. Actually, sometimes it might not be good for people the way that it might do good for me, and I need to let people be where they're at, and not assign some kind of moral code to that. And because of that, I think I've had to learn how to have certain boundaries or certain, I guess, different tiers within my relationships. Um, that, okay, yeah, if I'm choosing to do some of this work, then some of my more intimate relationships will look like somebody who could understand the work that I'm doing and understand the I guess the lessons that come along with it, or that I could relate with them and they could relate with me. So not everybody has to do that to be, in relationship with me, but it would just look different within each relationship. So it's definitely been a lesson of like, okay, I thought everyone that I loved and I wanted to be like in relationship with had to do this for us to like have a relationship in general, versus every relationship can look different and I can still love someone who maybe can't go there with me, and we'll have something else that we can relate on or bond on or share. And you have your different circles, your different layers within relationships. So yeah, I think the grief and like reestablishing like relational dynamics were the biggest challenges for sure.
Wow. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I love that you said you are conscious not to attach any moral code, because it kind of engages the ego there, right? And if you have a seeking mindset, you're also going to try and understand and be conscious and potentially dismantle that ego that shows up and affects how deeply you connect with other people. The way I keep that part of mine in check is I think maybe because I'm a Libra too, I'm just all about trying to balance things and the what ifs and the nuances in the middle. When I see people who don't live the way I do, who don't go as deep, who don't question and doubt and rumble with those things, and there's a part of me that envies them, and I allow that envy part to exist. I don't be like, no, I like my way. I paid a price to be this way, and I'm raising my kids in a conscious way, so it's my way that's better. I try and look at their perspective and how they live life and how simple things are and how less burdensome that kind of life can be, paradox. Those things can be true at the same time. So I just go like, I wonder if I would be more peaceful if I had, none of these open tabs in my head, in my life, that I'm trying to get to the bottom of.
Mm.
So yeah, I love that. The frustration with not being understood, the grief is something that I'm only recently allowing. It was almost going to cost me my softness, because I
Mm.
wasn't willing to grieve the friendships, the relationships that got ruined because I felt misunderstood and didn't know how to set boundaries and was in constant seeking of external validation, right? There are people I miss from my childhood, friendships that got ruined as a result. And
Yeah.
now, as of late, because I'm getting better at regulating my nervous system too, I can
Mhm.
rumble with grief and stay in grief and still be okay to be regulated for my kids. Like those emotions don't have to boil over into other
Mm.
areas of my life. I can grieve and then contain it there. And
Yeah.
it's so sweet there. It's sweet to
Yeah.
allow yourself to miss things about your past and things that you don't have a space for in your life right now, but it's so healthy, it's so good to be able to grieve it. So I love that you talked about it. It's not as easy to integrate in the cultural, religious, sexual, like gender roles and expectations that I grew up in. And
Mm.
only now I'm allowing that to be okay. And like you said, I love that. I'm going to take that with me to have those different tiers of
Mm.
friendships and relationships. Because if that particular relationship is not going to be okay with you having a different orientation to life in a way that you seek clarity, then time will tell if it can
Mm.
still survive or even
Mm.
maybe thrive with you being that way and the other person being their own way, right? And if it's
Yeah.
not, time will tell. Discomfort from your end and the other person's end is going to surface.
Yeah.
Ways of dealing with differences and conflict are going to be very different from your end and the other person's end. And Eckhart Tolle actually speaks a lot about that. Like, your
Mm.
relationship will speak to you if
Mm.
it's not able to survive and coexist in those different ways. And if it is, then that will also be the case. How do you rumble with doubt? I just recently did a blog on doubt and I'm getting mixed reactions from my readers about it. How do you rumble with doubt? Are you the kind of person that, well, I think I know the answer, but I'll let you answer it because I want to hear how you put it together. Um,
Yeah.
can you coexist with doubt, or do doubt and seeking kind of feel like opposites to you?
Mm. They definitely have to coexist for me because, like I said earlier, that seeking is not necessarily about the arrival. And sometimes some questions have never been answered, and I've had to be okay with that. Um, for me, doubt is the discomfort in not knowing,
Mm,
and not having like an answer or, the assurance that makes us very comfortable. That it's very natural to want.
mm,
Um, and in not having a lot of my answers met, or just having to be okay with not knowing a lot of things,
mm, mm,
I've had to grow very comfortable and acquainted with doubt, that it's not necessarily a bad thing, that um as uncomfortable as it is, being able to sit with it,
mm,
not need to escape it, not need to run from it. Um but yeah, it has definitely been a constant companion along my journey, and it's it's allowed me, like, say there is doubt that is, I guess, too uncomfortable to bear.
mm,
rather than needing to eliminate it, it's showing me that I need to sit with myself, um, get very quiet and dig with within the doubt also. The seeking doesn't end when I don't have assurance or clarity. It's, okay, I don't understand this thing. There's doubt here. There's unknown here. Uh, and I sit with myself enough to be okay with it. Like, yeah, that's okay.
So you take it with you. How was the process of getting there? Because it's so difficult to take doubt with you into seeking when what's the society and the life that produced you values and celebrates firm, clear, unwavering clarity at all cost.
I think a lot of that, when I realized and I really observed, a lot of people are living in confusion and doubt, but there's a lot of ways that we've learned to masquerade with these big performative facades, to be honest, like these big things that will hide that doubt. And when you poke enough, you'll see that quite everyone, grapples with doubt in one way or another. And it's not something that, those moments of clarity, those moments of assurance are fleeting, because life is ever evolving, ever changing, along with us. So you can always be certain. You can always know. So when you asked me, what does that look like for me? I think the more I was able to observe doubt in, I'd go look at the most successful person I could see and in worldly terms, and I'll be the one to sit there and ask questions with these kind of people and dig within their own story, and I'll see that, okay, even within the people that look like they have it all together and have everything that deems them successful or put together, even these people have doubt, and they have their questions and their moments as well. And I think it humanized it for me. And I was able to be more comfortable to recognize this is a universal experience. And I think doubt is one of the biggest fuels for seeking. So I see it as a beautiful thing as well. So totally redefining it and taking the shame out of it, uh, and seeing it not as like, oh, I've failed, or being uncomfortable with it being present. I think, yeah, that's allowed me to feel like it's a very, very common universal human experience, and I'm okay with having it.
Wow. And it's taken the work of unmasking it, realizing that people do feel it, do grapple with it. They just suppress it because it doesn't sell. It's not attractive. Especially in this day and age of social media and how we are boiled down to a couple of lines of commentary, and we expect ourselves to be even more sure, even more condescending, even more sarcastic, so we can have our ways, our thinking, our ideas, our beliefs to take hold or to be superior. I think even more now we're suppressing that need to be okay with not knowing, not being sure, changing our minds, rediscovering ourselves, all the uncertainty things. Do you believe seeking purpose is a universal human experience? And with that, have you ever questioned yours? And if yes, what did you do? How did that look like? How did it feel like?
Mm. Is seeking purpose a universal experience? I think anytime I want to know if something's a universal experience, I look at children.
Wow, tell me more about that.
Um, because anything after that can be equated to conditioning or,
Mm,
external sources. So when I really want to find the like root and more of the foundational parts of who we are, I'll look at my child self or I'll observe children. Um, so, you know, when I use that metric, I don't see children seeking for purpose.
no.
Probably because there's two things there. I think they're so present
Mm,
and focused on enjoying themselves and experiencing that there's no need for all of that.
mm.
Um, and then my intellectual self could also say they don't have the frontal lobe
The
for that.
prefrontal
So,
cortex hasn't
you
come
know,
online yet.
uh-huh. So they're not asking any of those deeper existential questions, but that's the beauty of childhood.
Yeah.
Um, that there's so much unknown that they're not, worried about. They're not concerned about. So they're free in a lot of those ways
Mm,
because yeah, a lot of that knowing of purpose, seeking of purpose is a burdensome journey because I think the beginning of that is recognizing that you don't have purpose.
mm.
Yeah, and then you're in pursuit of it. Um, and I think now it's more of a question than an answer. Um, Maybe purpose was never meant to be this, big, extravagant,
Mm,
thought out question that needs our 25-year-old, prefrontal cortex.
mm,
That it could be as simple as, life was meant to be enjoyed and experienced with our five senses like children do, and
mm,
that it's not as complicated as some of us might think, that we need this like very intricate, deep, spiritual journey to find our purpose when to me, my own seeking of purpose genuinely looked like a journey backwards, back to my child self,
mm,
back to like a very, very simple way of existing, and unlearning a lot of the things that I was taught that it meant to be, what it means to be an adult, what it means to be a
mm,
woman, what it means to be a good, um, a good Christian, a good Ethiopian, a good
mm,
insert all these identities that were, handed to me.
mm.
And to me, purpose genuinely looked like, okay, how can I get back to what it really meant to be a human, to be me, the essence of that without all these things that were, handed to me along the way.
Wow. There's two words circulating in my brain right now: discovery and play. And those are the two things that I see
Mm,
kids doing constantly, discovering and then finding joy and play and learning through it. And I'm thinking, what if that's their purpose, right? And then what if our purpose as we
mhm,
get older is to use those same muscles to find obviously something more meaningful that we do with that discovery and play, and that becomes purpose, right? That can be given the title the ultimate purpose. Like you said, doesn't have to be this intricate thing that we obsess over, because just like creativity, when you obsess over it, it probably eludes you. Perfectionism comes into the equation, and There isn't this one perfect thing you can be, because why can't you be the other thing and be perfect at that too? There's different roles, identities, there's different needs in the world that you see that you'd like to fill, especially if you're an empath. So I'm thinking, why can't we do that? Why can't we discover and play our way, engage the prefrontal cortex, which is awesome in helping us not discover and play our ways into injury, which we might as kids. It will help us make decisions. It will help us weigh benefits and costs and all that, but take really the same things that we have as kids and discover and play our way through a purpose. Are we having fun doing this thing? Are we getting better as we're discovering more things about this new idea, skill, field of study? So you still don't dodge my questions, okay? You still haven't answered if you ever questioned your purpose and if there was any uncertainty in the past. Was there a time, and how did that uncertainty affect your journey?